doing well by doing good. 40 years ago, that was hippie talk. That was not the subject of gatherings in hotel ballrooms that usually probably seat insurance company representatives and doctors and other professional organizations. But now, over the years, the dialogue has changed dramatically so that this is a topic all over the world that is being discussed in boardrooms and elsewhere. I love to use as an example to bookend how big this change has been two quotes. One from 1970 from the famous conservative economist Milton Friedman, who said, "The social responsibility of business is to increase its profits. Period. End of story." Not very enlightened, but a sentiment that I have heard repeated back to me over and over and over again over the years. Fast forward to 2008, to the height of the economic calamity hitting the US and all over the world, and you have the CEO of General Electric. You could not get a more blue chip, mainstream industrial company than General Electric, and their CEO is saying, when we come out of this fog, the notion that companies need to stand for something, they need to be accountable for more than just the money they earn, is going to be profound. What a difference 38 years makes, give or take. This is not only the parlance of what's going on in the boardroom and in academia, but consumers have changed their attitudes as well. And last year, a wonderful communications company, Cone Communications, based in Boston, very famous from their work in cause branding, did a global survey, talked to consumers in 10 different countries around the world, and they had a very different take from Milton Friedman. Only 6% of them were Friedman-esque and said, business is in the business to make profits and that's it. 94% were saying, no, they have a responsibility to have policies and implement them in such a way that they are giving back to society, they are changing the way that we address problems in many, many different forms. And what I'd like to add to that, and what the focus of our work at the Cause Marketing Forum it has been for these many years, is to say, yes, it is absolutely imperative that companies do the hard work to figure out how to make a profit while also adhering to and leading in these ideas of corporate social responsibility. But the business doesn't stop there, because if you do these things and you don't communicate them to this 94% of the world population for whom it's important, it's like that expression we use in English, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, did it make a sound? If you do good works and nobody knows about them, you get none of the credit. You'll surely get the blame when they do hear about something that goes wrong. And you don't get the psychic benefit that moves your team to move forward as well by having have this actually be additive to how you do business, whether it's consumer appreciation, employee enthusiasm, or even the market telling you you're doing a good job. So my goal today is to help you focus in a little bit on that and to solve a very common problem we often face. This idea that for the person who has a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Which is to say that if you don't have a lot of tools, a lot of concepts at your disposal to use when you're trying to figure out how to make this cause stuff work for your company in your context, then you will probably end up attacking it with the same thing that you do in every other part of your job. If you work at the corporate foundation, you'll say, let's give somebody a grant. And if you work in marketing, you'll say, let's make an ad. But the idea is that there are many different ways to approach issues in this world of corporate social responsibility and cause marketing. And my colleagues on the book, that Good Works, the Professor Philip Kotler, Emeritus Professor of Marketing at Northwestern University and Nancy Lee, they came up with the idea of corporate social initiatives as a way of describing these different ways to go to market. And they described it as 6 different types, 6 different buckets per se, into which you can put your thoughts, into which you can organize, how can we attack this as a company? 3 of them, the top 3, are more brand or marketing oriented, and the bottom 3 are more corporate oriented. What we're going to do now is go through some of these 6 different concepts that you can take home with you in your toolkit, and give some examples of how they've been used in the real world marketplace. And hopefully that will be of some value. So the first group is called cause promotion. And as the slide says, this is the idea that you provide funds or goods or services for promotions that increase awareness and concern about a social cause or support fundraising, participation, or volunteer recruitment for a cause. Some famous brands and their work in this area. Tylenol, the analgesic, is a big supporter of the arthritis walk. What a great connection between what people use their product for and a cause to which they lend their support. Marks and Spencer in the UK, they provide instruction to consumers and encouragement to consumers to organize fundraising coffees in their homes or at their workplaces or on the high street with their friends to raise money for Macmillan Cancer Support. The Food Network. Has the Food Network made it to Denmark? It is a cable network that's all about how to make delicious foods, and it's real easy, so they say. Anyway, the Food Network, they've adopted the cause of hunger, and they've created public service announcements, commercials that support the anti-hunger group, Share Our Strength. One example to go into in a little more detail is Macy's. Macy's is one of the largest higher-end department store chains in the United States. And over the last 8 or so years, they have really made a science out of how you partner with an NGO to create a proposition that will appeal to consumers, raise money while at the same time promoting sales. And although they do this with quite a few different organizations, the example I share is with Reading is Fundamental, which is a child literacy group, which gives away books and teaches kids how to read all across America, usually focusing on lower income groups. And what Macy's has come up with is they make an offer. They say to a consumer, when you're in our store, give us $3 to give to Reading is Fundamental. In exchange, we're going to give you a voucher. And the next time you shop, or even today, we'll give you $10 off of a $50 purchase. So $3 for $10, it's a very nice little offer. And since 2004, that little concept, with many, many other implementation steps, has raised $21 million for Reading is Fundamental, which is a substantial amount of money. And as they've gotten better at it, as they've learned what turns people on in their employee base, as well as what works with consumers, they have found how to make it better. I was fortunate enough to spend a little time with Tina Lindhorst of IKEA, and she told me that they have a similar experience to Macy's, which is so much of this is getting that shop person, the person who's standing at the register, to actually say, and would you like to give $3 and save 10 and support Reading is Fundamental? If you don't get that to do, you can make all of the nice ads you want. That's where the rubber meets the road. The way that Macy's has improved its performance in that way is to get the nonprofit to actually work on it as well. So each year, Reading is Fundamental makes their volunteers and staff make hundreds of visits to stores and speak to the employees and make them feel you're not just a shop clerk, you're a fundraiser. We depend on you and we need you. And if you'd like to come and meet the kids who are being supported by this effort, we invite you to do so as well. Each year they've had better performance. In 2011, $4.9 million was raised this year this way. And the redemption rate on the coupons is at close to 70%, which is extraordinary in Macy's experience. So it really works. So that is this idea of cause promotion. Next, we come to what many people think about when I enter a room, cause-related marketing, which in this case means the linkage of a contribution. It could be cash, it could be product, a linkage to that to a consumer action or very often a purchase. In the States, very famous programs would be Yoplait. Is that a brand in Denmark? No. Yoplait is a leading yogurt, little cups of yogurt that you get in the supermarket in the States. And during certain times of the year, they make the lids pink. Does pink have any meaning from a nonprofit perspective here? In the United States, it is breast cancer. And so if you send in your pink lid, they will give 10 cents to the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Organization. They have raised tens of millions of dollars this way. Soap.com, an upstart online retailer, they've decided that they can get more referrals. If you buy from me, I want you to tell your friends. And if your friends buy, I'm going to give them a discount. But when they started offering you, for making a referral, $10 in the form of a contribution to a charity that you like, referrals went way up compared to just offering you a percentage off. TELUS, which is a major telecommunications company in Canada, they give $100 to a local charity in your province if you will sign up with them for cable television service or cellular phone service. It's a very, very common tactic, and some companies do a very good job of building it into a bigger, more meaningful program. And a great example of that is Tom's Shoes. Tom's Shoes is literally, it seems like it's been with us forever. It's in the States, very, very popular. And it was started by an entrepreneur in his LA apartment who went on a trip and saw that there were a lot of poor shoeless children. And he said, I'm going to create a shoe, and that every time we sell it, we're going to give a pair of shoes to a child in need. This concept caught on so much that in the next 4 years, they sold over 1 million pairs of shoes and gave away 1 million pairs of shoes in the process. And in fact, that's a picture of the company. There is no Tom. Tom stands for something like the shoes of tomorrow. But that's Blake Mycoskie, the founder, and one of the things that he and his employees do is they actually go on trips to the countries where the shoes are being given away and put them on the feet of kids. And what Tom says is that what they found in this experience is that Tom's has been successful because they have created a new way of going to market. The giving concept of Tom's makes our shoes more than a product. They're part of a story, part of a mission, and a movement to join. I understand that this idea of a movement was something discussed more profoundly and perhaps better by one of your earlier speakers, but very, very much the case with Tom's, as well as one other thing. The Tom's shoes, I think it's called, the style is an espadrille. It's a particular look of shoe. And I think that when you wear Tom's shoes, people often know you're wearing Tom's shoes, and many people like the idea that you know that I'm a giving person, that I buy that kind of shoe. Several years ago, there was a huge fad in the US, and I think it was international, with the Live Strong yellow bracelet, supporting the Lance Armstrong Cancer Organization, started by Nike. And that again, too, caught on because of what it told other people about the kind of person you are. Next, we have corporate social marketing. And here we're talking about programs where the focus is in changing the behavior of a certain group of individuals in a pro-social way. Allstate Insurance in the States spends a lot of money to try to get teens to drive their cars more safely. Sanofi Pasteur, the pharmaceutical company which has a division specializing in vaccines, they've done programs to persuade parents and grandparents and other caregivers of newborns to get a whooping cough vaccination, because during the first few months of a child's life, they're not yet immunized, and if they can catch that disease at that time. A famous campaign, over 20 years old, is for Energizer batteries. Energizer did research, and they found that a few thousand people a year in the States die or are injured in fires, and that many of those fires happen at night when they're asleep, and that many of those people who are injured are in homes where they didn't put a new battery in the smoke alarm. So they decided that they could adopt that as a cause. They teamed up with the International Association of Fire Chiefs and local fire departments, and they made this their joint calling to get people each year when they change the time of the clock in the fall. They also use that as a prompt to say, oh yes, I should change the battery in my smoke alarm. Those people who study social marketing say that that kind of making it easy, that reminder, that making it a reflex thing that you do by habit is fabulous for getting compliance with such a program. Tremendous goodwill was generated by the program. And P.S., they sold a lot of batteries as well. Now we move from that first line, which is primarily looking at marketing, to looking at the more corporate side, bigger picture types of programs. Number one, corporate philanthropy, the idea that a corporation makes a monetary in-kind or other type of contribution to a cause or their community. This, for many years, was sort of laughed at in a sense. I mean, a lot of wonderful contributions were made, but often it was seen that the way that this was decided, it was whatever the CEO happened to like, or even at another time, what the CEO's wife liked. A lot of opera companies did very good with that sort of perspective. Anyway, in more recent years, there's been a demand by shareholders, by management, by consumers to say this should be more strategic. So companies have taken more time to align what they give to the causes that have some meaning to their business. It may be that they're entering new markets and want to develop a reputation as a good player there. It may be that they're worried that the skilled workers that they need in the future aren't getting the education that they need, and so they support education. It takes a lot of different shapes. A really charming, interesting story from a much smaller company than many of the others that we've talking about is the Boston Brewing Company. Do you drink beer in this country? Oh, okay. The Boston Brewing Company was started by an entrepreneur named Jim Cook in his apartment. Everybody starts something in their apartment. I should get an apartment. In 1984, and he couldn't get a beer distributor to take the product. He called it Sam Adams, Sam Adams being a famous early revolutionary period patriot, famous in Boston. Anyway, he would literally go to bar to sell them on this beer. Eventually it caught on, and he likes to say he's the biggest pygmy in the beer business. They have captured 1% of the US market, which isn't bad, but it's not got the people at Budweiser worrying all that much. At any rate, he felt it was really important to give back to the industry, the food and beverage industry from which he had come. And so he created Sam Adams Brewing the American Dream, where they give funding in terms of micro loans, as well as, very importantly, mentoring to low and middle income entrepreneurs who are trying to start food and beverage businesses. They started locally in their home base of New England, and several years later, they are now going national. They went from a pool of revolving pool of credit of $250,000 to $1 million. It's done wonderful things for the company. It's done wonderful things for their industry. And it's a terrific story. Social media, this is, you go to whatever conference you're at, somebody is talking about social media. So I felt it was my responsibility to make sure it was mentioned at least once in this speech. And in this case, corporate philanthropy is often adopting social media as a way of democratizing their giving. And what they're doing in many cases is giving consumers some power to determine where money goes. In the States, a couple of years ago, Pepsi decided that they were famous for doing the most spectacular advertising in our Super Bowl, just happened this weekend, go Giants. And they took $20 million that they normally would spend on that and created a pool of money that they were going to give away over the course of a year to individuals and groups that would be doing programs that would refresh their communities. 84 million consumers voted over the course of a year on how that money should be given away. There were some challenges in that program as well, because some people got very clever and figured out how to go around the regular voting system, and there supposedly were people in India who were being paid to keep on voting for them. But the intention was good, and it certainly did some amazing things to elevate Pepsi's image as a company that gives back. Next, we have workforce volunteering, which is pretty self-explanatory. The idea that companies have their workers out in the field volunteering for worthy causes. What's been changing in, again, this idea of making it more strategic, it used to be that the HR person ended up being responsible for figuring out where we could go paint a school once a year, and that was workforce volunteering. Now, more and more companies are trying to align what their people are doing with the strategic corporate initiatives that they're doing elsewhere in the company, and also using their skills to the best possible use. Much more valuable for an accountant to help a nonprofit with their books than to be painting the exterior of their offices. So a nice example of that is Federal Express. Federal Express perhaps has one of the largest fleets of trucks all over the world. And of course, they're very conscious of safety. They don't want to hit other trucks, and they definitely don't want to hit pedestrians. One of the leading causes of death of children in those early tween years is actually fatalities having to do with being hit by cars. So they developed, with a group called Safe Kids Worldwide, a program to teach kids how to be safer as they're walking to school, walking to their friend's house, walking into town. And every year, thousands of Federal Express employees, whether they're in the Philippines or Chicago, go out to schools, go out to community groups, and give these lessons that have been customized to the needs of those communities. And since this program started about a decade ago, over 2 million kids have been touched by it. Finally, we have socially responsible business practices, and having read a little bit about a bunch of you, I bet that many of you are involved in working on these types of practices for your business. What are the discretionary, what are the things that are not mandated by law that you must do that your company embraces in order to be more environmentally sound, fair labor practices, etc.? A great example of how this is done on the basis of it's the right thing to do, but also on the basis of it makes us even closer to our consumer and helps them become a part of the solution, is Whole Foods. Whole Foods is the leading natural foods retailer in the United States, and they're very conscious, and their consumers conscious of the fact, and my gosh, who knows more about fish than you all? This is that there's a sustainability problem with our fisheries. So they came up with a labeling concept, green, yellow, red. Green means that the fish is abundant. You really needn't have any nightmares about the fact that you ate it for dinner. Yellow means there are some concerns, and they're being looked into. You might want to make a second thought. Red means they're overfished, or there's something really awful that's a side effect of how they're being fished. And this program has won it huge accolades from consumers and made friends for it within the sustainable fisheries movement, and it was created with the Monterey Bay Aquarium and the Blue Ocean Institute, and is part of the company's commitment that by 2013 it will no longer sell any of the red fish. So we now have talked about these 6 different types of corporate and marketing social initiatives. How many of your companies are doing at least one of them? Okay. So I mean, you may not be using these terms, but people are experimenting, companies are experimenting. Some leading edge companies are doing them all. And just to give a quick example, would be Starbucks. Love them or hate them, they are doing a lot of things to try to do the right thing in this regard. So just a quick review of single examples in each of these fields. In 2005, they bought a company called Ethos Water, and every time you buy an Ethos Water bottle in their stores, a nickel goes to a fund for projects to give clean water access in developing countries. $6 million has been raised. Over 400,000 people have been positively impacted by the projects that it supports. In corporate social marketing, they're trying hard to persuade people to bring their own cups, because they realize that that cup that you get with the green lady on it, it has a big environmental footprint. So at least in the States, anytime that you bring your own cup to Starbucks, you get 10 cents off the cost of the cup. And in recent years, each time you go on Earth Day, you actually get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea for free. In the world of corporate philanthropy, last year, the very leader, Howard Schultz, the founder of the company, got a lot of press for saying, hey, we want to help create more jobs in the US. We have a very high unemployment rate going. And so he said, small business, such as Starbucks once was, is really one of the great drivers of the creation of new jobs. And so we're creating a movement called Jobs for USA, in which we are supporting institutions that give loans, make it easier for small business to get loans. And Starbucks started that initiative by giving $5 million from its corporate foundation to the Opportunity Finance Network, an NGO that works in that regard. In the world of cause promotion, at this very same time, they said, and we want you, consumer, to help in this effort. We all have to gang together. So please make a $5 contribution when you come into our shop. And if you do, we will give you one of these bracelets that symbolize the fact that we're all in this together and you're a part of the movement. Workforce volunteering has been a part of the culture of Starbucks from its very beginning. And whether you work at headquarters in Seattle or in Shanghai, they make opportunities and encourage employees to volunteer. And they've made a corporate commitment that by 2015, they'll be globally giving 1 million hours a year of volunteer time. And finally, socially responsible business practices, going back to that cup that we love to hate. They want this to be recyclable. And they have invested heavily in creating a recyclable cup, as well as working with their competitors to band together so that they'll all be creating a market for economical recyclable cups, and even more so, tackling the really hard problem, which is how do you create infrastructure so that this recyclable cup will actually be recycled. There's really no great win in taking one of these wonderful recyclable cups and putting it in the same waste stream where it doesn't get recycled. And they have set a goal that by 2015, 100% of the beverages they serve will either go into a recyclable cup or a reusable cup. So everybody's got that memorized? Very good. I'm hoping that our fearless leaders, our hosts, will share these notes with you. And that these ideas, these concepts, will provide you with just a stepping off point, a new set of tools, or a new way of thinking about the tools you may already have, so that you can be more successful at this idea of doing well by doing good. You can, as you know, you can make a difference. To learn more, what author wouldn't use this opportunity to say, my book's available in June, but instantly you can go to causemarketingforum.com, where we have literally hundreds of articles about best practices, about case studies, about the issues of the day. And my email is dh@causemarketingforum.com. I'd welcome your comments.